Hello everyone and welcome back to another After Effects tutorial. I'm your host, Elias Sarantopoulos. Motion graphics and animation can be an easy process inside After Effects by just using shape layers. So let us go ahead and explore how to spice up your work by creating and animating accent motion graphics the easy way. Alright, so let us go ahead and kick this off inside After Effects with a brand new document. And the first thing I'm going to do is go to the layer menu and create a new solid layer. So I'm going to rename this to BG and make sure that I have the same width and height, which means I'm going to click on the make column size just in case, and then click OK. Now, in the event actually that you want to go back to the same window, back to the solid settings, you can also go back to the layer menu and choose solid settings. And now we're back on the same window. In this case, I'm going to use the eyedropper tool to choose one of the colors that I have saved inside my libraries and then click OK. And at the same time, I'm going to lock this layer so I don't accidentally move anything. Great. Now I'm going to go back to the layer menu and I'm going to create a new shape layer. In this case, we get the shape layer 1. I always like to rename my layers and I highly recommend you do the same. So in this case, I'm going to press Enter Return and I'm going to rename this to outer circle. Hit Enter Return. And if I was to look at the contents of this shape layer here, we got contents, pretty much nothing, and the general transformations. Okay, which means we need to add certain elements. So I'm going to click on the Add Flat menu and add an ellipse. When we do that, After Effects goes ahead and creates the perfect circle right in the center of the composition. Now, if I was to open up the ellipse properties here, I only see the size and the position, which means we need to add more things to it. Again, I'm going to click on the Add Flat menu. And I'm going to add, I'm going to add a stroke. So for the stroke, I'm going to target the stroke width. The stroke width right now is set to 2 pixels. So first of all, I'm going to create the first keyframe by clicking on the stopwatch. And I'm going to set the stroke width to something big, let's say 50 pixels. Then, I'm going to scrub the current time indicated to perhaps 1 second or so, and then click on this to set from 50 down to 0. And After Effects goes ahead and create a keyframe for us. So if I was to ramp preview this by pressing the spacebar on the keyboard, and I'm going to be doing this quite a lot, this is what we get. All right, nothing special, but this is what we have right now. Great. Yeah, this is one thing. Let's go ahead and press the letter S on the keyboard and that will bring out the general scale of the outer circle of the shape layer. And the first I'm going to do is bring the current time indicator to the very first beginning of the timeline. Click on the stopwatch to create the first keyframe and then press the letter U on the keyboard to show properties with keyframes. Now, I did this so I can show you that the next keyframe that I'm going to create is going to be right here on the same spot. So if you want it to be accurate inside After Effects, and instead of trying to guess where is the exact position of the next keyframe, for example, there's a great keyboard shortcut, which is the letter K. So the letter K goes to the next visible keyframe, and the letter J goes to the previous visible keyframe. So I'm going to be using those a lot. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to press the letter K and I'm going to set the scale to 300%. And I'm going to jump to the previous keyframe, the previous visible keyframe, and I'm going to set this to 0. So let's go ahead and press the spacebar for the ramp preview. And this is what we have. Okay. It's a little slow, but let's see. I'm going to keep the time for now. Now, as you can see here, basically, we have a linear animation, which means the animation begins instantly at the first keyframe and continues to the next one at a constant speed and velocity, which means it's a quite boring animation. So let's go ahead and spice things up. For that, I'm going to target the stroke width, and I'm going to click on the graph editor. As you can see here, with the straight segments, this is a linear animation. Now, another thing that I want to mention is if I was to click on the choose graph type and options, I'm working inside the speed graph, but you can also work inside the value graph. Right now, I'm going to stick with the speed graph, and I'm going to change the type, the interpolation type, from linear to easy is. Now, basically, easy is a combination of is in and is out, and it's used when elements need to be accelerated and decelerated, and that's what exactly we're going to do. So let's target this keyframe. Now, these are two keyframes. You can also bring this influence handle. This is the influence handle. Bring it in. Okay, we're looking at the percentage number here. You can also double click on this keyframe to bring out the keyframe velocity. So I'm going to set the influence to 70%. And I'm going to do the same exactly on the first keyframe. Double click on that. And I'm going to set the outgoing velocity to 70%. Most of the times I do this numerically just to make sure that I have the same speed. Okay, this is on the stroke width. How about the scale? Let's marquee select these two keyframes and change the interpolation type from linear interpolation to easy is. Again, I'm going to double click here, and for the incoming velocity, I'm going to set the influence to 70%. Double click on this keyframe, I'm going to set the outgoing velocity to 70% as well. Okay, so I'm going to click back on the graph editor here to go back to the layer bar mode, and then bring the current time indicator to the very beginning. Press the space bar for the RAM preview. Not bad. See that motion? I like what I see. All right, and the timing I think is okay for now. Let's go ahead and actually add one more thing. I'm going to go back to the Add Flat menu, click on that, and I'm going to add another stroke. So I have two strokes. First of all, let me change the color of the first stroke here, and perhaps use this color. There we go. And now we have the second stroke. So when I press the space bar for the RAM preview, as you can see, at the end of the animation, the circle still maintains its width size, which is set to, let's see, inside here, is set to 2 pixels. So what we're going to do is we're going to keyframe this. So I'm going to click on the stopwatch for the first keyframe, and then I'm going to jump to the next keyframe by pressing the letter K. And actually, I should do this on the visible keyframes. So let me press the letter U and then press the letter K for the next visible keyframe. So I'm going to set this to 0. There we go. Let's RAM preview this. I like what I see. Now, by the way, you can change, right? You can change when this stroke is more visible or not, depending where do you want this to start. I believe this is okay, and I'm quite happy with that. Okay, so we got the first circle. Just make sure that you save your work. Control is to save, Command is to save. All right, so we've got the first circle. Now let us go ahead and create a second one. And the easiest thing to do here is to actually make just a duplicate. So select your layer and use the Control D or Command D on the keyboard to duplicate that. And then actually let me go ahead and rename this. I'm going to press the Enter return on the keyboard, and I'm going to rename this to inner circle like so. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset the whole layer just a bit in time, so it doesn't start immediately. Okay. So if I was to RAM preview this, it's going to be something like that. Okay. This is subject to change. Of course, a lot of things will be subject to change. So let's go ahead and open up the scale property. I'm going to press the letter S on my keyboard, and then I'm going to jump to the next visible keyframe, which is this one. And I'm going to set the scale property from 300 down to 220%. So we have something along those lines. Okay, let's go ahead and open up all the contents. As you can see, we have 2 strokes because we duplicated this. So I'm going to press the delete key on my keyboard to remove the second stroke and just keep 1 stroke. In this case, let's open this up. And I'm going to change the color, of course. So we have 2 different colors. And let's see, what else can we do? Well, let's go ahead and target the stroke width as we did with the first one. So I'm going to press the letter J to jump to this keyframe. And I'm going to set the stroke width from 50 down to 15. All right. So if I scrub the current time indicator, I have something along those lines. Okay, what else can I do? Okay, circles look good, but we can also have a bit of variety here. So instead of a circle, I can actually have dots, just dots. And the way we do this is inside the dashes. So if you hover over the plus icon here, it says add a dash or a gap. In this case, I'm going to do both. Click on the first one. We got a dash. Click again, you have a gap. So first of all, you see those ridged ends? This is under the line cap. The line cap controls basically the path's stroke end. So I'm going to click, instead of butt cap, I'm going to go for a round cap. Here it is. And then I'm going to set the dash from 10 down to 0. Here it is. See that? This is what we have. Problem is, there are way too many dots here. So I'm going to increase the gap, right, to perhaps 21. Let's see. There we go. It looks good, right? But what else can we do here? Let's see. If I was to move the whole thing, you see, offset this a little bit less, I can have this circle to appear a little faster there. See that? That's one thing I can do. Another thing is I can influence the stroke width. See that? So let me just run preview this for a second. There we go. Let's do this again. So I like the gap. I like when it appears and I like when it dies down. See that? Great. What else can we do? This is very nice, but we can actually animate this circle. And we do this from the offset. So I'm going to create the first keyframe. I'm going to click on the stopwatch on the offset. And the first offset, let's see, I'm going to set this to, let's see, minus 21, because we want to rotate this clockwise and then go a little further and set this to 0. Let's see, did it work or is the opposite? Yeah, it's the opposite. So I'm going to press the letter J and this is going to be 0. And the next keyframe, it will be set to minus 21. All right, so let's run preview this. This is exactly what I was going for. Now, the thing is that the animation here, it needs to extend, not beyond here, of course. So let's run preview this. Perfect. See that? And I like what I see. Now, there's a lot of things you can do here and change the timing, how long this rotates, and so on. So for now, this is okay. I'm going to keep this. And just don't forget to save your project, controls to save, or commands to save. All right, so we've got those 2 circles. Let's go ahead and add more elements to our accent graphics animation and spice things up. So what I'm referring to is basically add a straight segment, just a straight line. Now, I'm going to do this actually from the very center of this composition. And After Effects can help us with that by clicking on the Choose Grid and Guide options, and then use the Title Action Save. And right off the bat, we can see this crosshair line right here, which means this is the very center point of the composition. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and use the pen tool to create the first anchor point right here. And immediately we get this shape layer 1. Great. Now let me zoom out a bit and lay down the second anchor point around here. Now don't forget to hold down the shift key as you do. Click on that. And here's the straight line. Okay, no need for the title action save. Let me zoom in a bit. And as you can see, we have again straight segments here. So let's go ahead and fix all those things. I'm going to rename this to line. And then I'm going to open up its contents and target, of course, the stroke. Okay, so for the stroke, the line cap is set to butt cap. We'll go for round cap. Here it is. Now we have round corners. Change definitely the color instead of white to perhaps this color. I can also click on that and bring this a little bit brighter. There we go. And let's see, let me zoom out here and set the width, the stroke width to perhaps 4. All right, because was a bit too thick. Great. Now we need to decide when this line animates. When does it start and where does it end? And the best way to do this inside After Effects, especially with shape layers, is to add a trim paths operator. So in the add flyout menu, I'm going to go ahead and use the trim paths operator. It's a great feature because it allows us to animate the start, the end, and the offset of a path with precise adjustments. And that's what we want to do. So first of all, we need to decide when this is going to start taking place. So let's say perhaps around here, I'm going to add the start and end. I'm going to have 2 keyframes here. Now I want the one to have 0 and the other one, I'm going to set this to end instead of 100. You see if I scrub this, right? I'm going to use 50%. So basically halfway. See that? Halfway. And then the rest of the way is going to be probably the rest of the animation. So this is not set yet. All right. So we need to play with the timing here. So when is it going to be the next one? Let me target this one and press the letter U to make sure that I can see where the keyframes end. So I'm going to press the letter K to go to these keyframes and set the start to 100 and 100. This is not correct yet. So let's see how it works. There we go. It's a little too slow, but that's okay. We're going to fix that. The question is, how much do you want of the path to appear and disappear? You see, we have the start and end. So when I scrub this to the left, you're going to get more of a lifespan. See? So the height kind of increases. See that? So if you like that, you keep it this way. It's entirely up to you. But what we need to change is we need to fix how the animation, the interpolation animation. In this case, I'm going to click on the start, click on the graph editor. As you can see, we have a linear interpolation. So I'm going to marquee select those 2 keyframes and use the easy is. We're going to do the same trick again, double click to set the keyframe velocity for the incoming to 70%. Double click on this keyframe, set the outgoing velocity to also 70%. We'll do the same thing on the end, marquee select those 2 keyframes, change the linear interpolation to easy is, double click for the incoming velocity, 70%. And for the outgoing velocity, back to 70%. Again, I like to do this numerically, so I have the exactly same animation. Perfect. You see that? That looks great. What it doesn't look great is when this line appears and disappears. You see, I don't want to have this line visible here because the animation begins with the circles and not with the line. That means we need to make sure that the line is not visible, perhaps to around here. We'll see. So for that, we're going to bring up the opacity. And inside After Effects, the keyboard shortcut for the opacity is the letter T for opacity. Okay, so I'm going to set the first keyframe here. And let me press the letter U again to see all the visible keyframes. And then set this to 0. And then scrub the current time indicator just a bit and set this to 100%. Let's play that. Okay, which means you can change when this appears or disappears. So I'm going to actually bring this out a bit. This one too. Perfect. Again, you can play with those two depending your animation. Something along those lines, okay? There we go. So it's up to you how much do you want to, in which exact time you want this to appear or disappear. Entirely up to you. So let's say I like this. We're going to continue this to the next part to show you some even more cool stuff. Don't forget to save, controls to save, commands to save. All right, so one more cool thing to do before we close this up. So I'm going to go back to the Add Flight menu, and this time I'm going to add a zigzag operator. Once I do that, you can see that the straight segment has become a zigzag. Great. Now, one thing that I noticed is that we have this red background color. Actually, this is the fill color. So if you open up the fill here, I'm going to set the opacity from 100% down to 0, and the fill color disappears. Great. Now let's look inside the zigzag parameters. So we got the size, the ridges per segment, and the points. Right now the points are set to corner, and actually I would like to have something smoother. All we have to do is just click on this drop-down menu and set this to smooth points. I believe this looks a little better, at least on my end. All right, so we got the size and the ridges per segment. So I'm going to scrub the current time indicator to, let's say, around here. I'm going to set the first keyframe for the size and another keyframe for the ridges per segment. I'm going to set the size to 0 and the ridges per segment also to 0. Then I'm going to scrub the current time indicator to perhaps around here at the end of the last keyframe. Set the size to 4 and the ridges per segment also to 4. Now, of course, this is subject to change depending your own animation. So I'm going to press the space bar on my keyboard for the RAM preview and see how I like this animation. And I actually like it quite a bit. Now, of course, there's a lot you can do. You can change the size or the ridges per segment and have your own settings here, depending what you're after. Okay, so let's say I like this. Now the next step is basically us to make a lot of duplicates clockwise all around. But what we need to pay attention to is where all these transformations begin from. You see, the pivot point for the line here is set to be right here, right at the very bottom. And this is very important once we go clockwise. So this actually is, inside After Effects, is called the anchor point. If yours is not set here, you can always go to the pan behind anchor point tool. So click on that and set the anchor point right there at the very beginning of the line. And then all transformations would take place from here. So now we are ready to go to the next step and make a bunch of duplicates. So Control D or Command D to make the first duplicate. And then I'm going to press the letter R on the keyboard to bring up the rotation property. And this is for the general rotation. So I'm going to set this, since we're going clockwise, to 45 degrees. I'm going to duplicate this again, Control D or Command D. Press the letter R for the rotation. Set this to 90 degrees. I'm going to continue this. This is going to be set to 135 degrees. The next one will be set to 180 degrees. The next one will be set to 225 degrees. The next one will be set to, we had 225, 270, and I believe we have one to go. And that will be set to 315 degrees. So let's ramp preview all of these. Press the space bar. There we go. I really like what I see. Again, there's a lot you can do. You can offset this in time. There's so many things you can change and play around. So I like what I see the animation. Now there's one last thing I would like to mention, which is the whole animation ends around here, which means the rest is empty. So you don't want to have the animation dragging on and on and on. Basically what we need to do is we need to set the end of the work area around here. And the keyboard shortcut is the letter N. Now what we can do is just right click and trim comp to work area. So if we ramp preview this, then we only see this looping on and on. Okay, this is exactly what we're going for. So there it is, folks, an example of accent graphics animation using simple shapes, circles, trim paths, zigzag rotations, and so on. Something that you can use for your own projects, movies, or what have you. Thank you everyone for visiting my channel and watching the inspired lectures and tutorials. Do not forget to subscribe and share the knowledge.